I'm an environmental lawyer. For 40 years, I've been suing people who try to evade democracy. So a government agency will give a permit to a pipeline that where they didn't go through a public hearing process, or they'll give a permit to discharge into the Hudson River, or they'll give a permit to a big development to build without actually having notice and comment rulemaking. And I sued them. I sued Donald Trump twice because he was able to buy off upstate towns in the New York City watershed to give them permits to build golf courses. And they went ahead and did it without doing an environmental impact statement and without doing the notice and comment rulemaking. And I won. And those two places, one of them's a public park now, and the other one, both of them are public parks now. And those golf courses never got. So that's what I've done. And the weird thing to me about this whole mess is that, and I've said this before, nobody objects if Tony Fauci says, hey, we're going to all wear masks for 2 weeks and we're going to lock down for 2 weeks to flatten the curve so that we don't overwhelm the hospitals. And, government has a right to do a certain amount of emergency authorizations and orders to do those things. And by the way, those overwhelming of the hospitals never happened. There were no diversion orders with a hospital. There were 2 hospitals in New York that got a lot of patients, but that was because all the patients were being sent to those 2. The rest of them were empty and were getting furloughed. And so nobody objects you do that. But if you then stretch it out and it goes 3 weeks and 4 weeks and 5 weeks and 6 weeks and 7 months, now you have to say, wait a minute. Now we have time for democracy. And you got to do democracy. You can't just order a fiat. You can't just say mask work, wear them, and shut up. That's what they're doing. And here's what democracy would look like. The Department of Health would publish a proposed rule that says everybody wears masks and you wear them in public places when you're indoors. And you wear them during such time when the hospitals are overwhelmed. So it's a reasonable rule that has reasonable parameters on it, and limitations. Those are the kind of rules that the government will accept. But then you have to publish an environmental impact statement and a regulatory impact statement. And that statement shows the justification for that rule. So it gives you a list of all the studies and a summary of what those studies show. And it gives you the opinions of the experts, and it forces them to tell you why that rule is critical. And it tells you what the cost is of the rule, including what happens to the mass. You're creating all these masks. Where do you throw them away? Even the little costs have to be assessed in that environmental impact statement. None of that happened. All they did is say, wear the mask, and then you're going to do it for 2 weeks, and then they kept extending it. And then what happens after that is there is a notice and comment period where you have a hearing, which is called a legislative style hearing, where any member of the public can come and make a statement about that rule. So if you are a indoor track or indoor skating rink owner, you can come and say, look, that rule, since it's indoors and it's public, is going to ruin my business. If there's another way to do this that's less burdensome on me, and here's how to do it. Or if you're a restaurant owner, you can say, can they wear the mask when you first come in, but when you sit down, we don't want them wearing the mask. And everybody comes and they give their opinion, and then the government goes back and rewrites the rule to accommodate the reasonable request. Then you have a real administrative hearing where people like me come in with, they designate parties, which would be Children's Health Defense, and I submit written testimony by my experts that say, wait a minute, all of those studies you're citing are badly flawed, and none of them are peer-reviewed, and none of them are placebo-tested. And by the way, here's 88 studies say the opposite. And I have, here's, the former head of CDC and the best guy from Stanford and the best guy from Harvard who are saying masks don't work. And then they get to cross-examine my witnesses. I get to cross-examine their witnesses. And then the judge makes a recommendation based upon that hearing, and it has to be rationally based. That's what democracy looks like. None of that was done.
No, none of it was
all
done.
Just wear the friggin' mask and do what you're told. And the people who are angry about wearing masks, they're not, masks have now become this symbol of rectitude and shaming and vilification and vigilantism. The people who aren't wearing masks are not selfish people. They're people who are saying, wait a minute, this feels really uncomfortable because I'm not hearing the rationale. I'm not feeling like I'm part of the decision. I'm not feeling like I'm part of a democracy here. I like leadership, but I don't like bullying. Americans don't like to be bullied. And this feels like bullying. And, that's where this conflict comes from. But you go on CNN and they're saying, oh, look at all these selfish people who aren't wearing masks. And they're not interviewing people like me who say, it's not because they're selfish. That's what I would tell Anderson Cooper. It's because there was no democracy. And, we want to see some democracy here. And that's being completely trampled, not just with the censorship, but the utter wholesale abandonment of due process of law.
Well, yeah, absolutely. This speaks directly to the fundamentally anti-democratic character of propaganda, I mean, we associate it with the Nazis, we associate it with the Soviets, because, we sense that there's something oppressive, domineering, and irrational about it. The fact is that it was perfected in Britain and the United States, modern propaganda. It's not really a totalitarian thing in that sense, but it has a totalitarian effect. It wants no argument. It wants no contradiction. This is why advertisers don't want to see any content on the media that they subsidize that contradicts their interests, right? So what you have is a situation in which any kind of debate, such as you're proposing, and which would be absolutely appropriate in a really democratic system, that's anathema to the propagandists. They want to monopolize the entire space. They want no contradiction, right? They don't want any argument at all. They want no argument, and they appeal to irrational impulses. And in this case, it's a kind of terror, it's fear of death. It's a kind of sanctimonious kind of self-righteous hostility to those who don't obey. It's all about compliance. I mean, it's in a fundamental way completely anti-American in that sense. It's not about an informed public making a decision based on information. It's about a kind of emotional bullying and a kind of mobocratic massing against anybody who won't go along with it. And they're always dismissed as Trump supporters. I mean, this happens invariably. That's Trump's function, He takes his mask off on the White House balcony, and this becomes evidence that masks do work. I mean, that's how moronic people are, But that's what propaganda speaks to the lizard brain. It's not really talking to your forebrain. It's not asking you to use your mind. It's just going straight for the gut, straight for the heart. So there are people all around me as I sit talking to you. They're out there in the streets. They're all wearing masks. They have their children wearing masks. This is outdoors. This is even in the sunlight. This was even during the hottest days of summer. It's insane. I mean, there was a story came out of China over the summer. 3 Chinese teenagers had dropped dead in their gym classes because they were running laps in masks, N95 masks. They died, 3 different provinces, which moved the authorities, the health authorities in those provinces to ban the wearing of masks during exercise. We also found 3 other news reports all over China of 3 adults, 2 of whom dropped dead doing their morning exercises in masks, and 1 of whom slipped into a coma. That's China. It was reported there. Why wasn't that reported over here? It was in maybe 2 newspapers here. It was reported all over Japan. Okay, that's important because we've got people jogging in masks. We've got people biking in masks. This is craziness. And let me add, speaking of the democratic system and federal agencies, the people who don't want to wear masks, aren't disinclined to wear them only because they don't know what the rationale is, but because they have medical conditions that mean they cannot wear masks. Asthmatics can't wear them. Diabetics can't wear them. People with COPD can't wear them. People with heart disease, hypertension. This is all in OSHA's own guidelines, Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They monitor workplaces to make sure workers are being treated properly so that their health's not being put at risk. There's one government agency that isn't a captive agency yet, as far as I know. Why aren't we hearing about this? Why are we shaming people who aren't wearing masks when mask wearing could make them sick or even kill them? I mean, it's really perverse, but it's antithetical to democracy, as you say. It's about something else, something more perverse, something more manipulative, something that almost feels occult, masking like this. It's like some kind of secret society. It's really, really wrong.
Well, we know Children's Health Defense, we don't take a position on masks or not, but we do keep track of the science, and we print the science. And as you say, the science, every day, the science is building and building. That we haven't been able to find a single peer-reviewed, placebo-controlled study that supports the use of masks against viral respiratory infection. And we found many, many of those studies that say it doesn't work. And then, as you say, there are additional studies that show that that it can cause other illnesses, and the oxygen problems, and the gingivitis problems, and the gum problems, and the skin problems, etc.